Hey guys,
I'm Jerry.
I'm Sierra.
We're ladies.
And we tangent.
What's up, everyone?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh my god.
Just a couple fall bitches.
Oh, it is feeling fall and it's October officially.
know.
I mean, it was when our last episode came out, but we hadn't recorded it in fall.
Well, also, it's been 80 degrees for the last week. And so,
For real.
yeah, Sierra's wedding was like the only break in weather we had. And then
Again.
it went straight back to being balls ass hot.
Was that the universe? Maybe. I think
Maybe.
probably.
Mhm.
Because, yeah, then it went back up to fucking 80s this last week and I
Yeah.
was sweating my
Mhm.
jadge off.
I was sweating all morning. And I came in to get ready. And then right before we're ready to record, I'm like, I'm a chilly bitch.
Cold. Yeah, we're getting down into the 50s and
Yeah.
60s. It's where mommy like it.
So we walked
But
down.
only in fall. When it's spring and it's 50s and 60s, I'm like,
Angry.
where's the 70-degree weather,
Yes.
bitch? It's crazy.
Yes. So
Yeah.
we walked down a couple stores and I got a sweatshirt from a cute local shop.
So cute. It says Halloween 1978, right?
Is that what it says?
Halloween
I
1978.
genuinely like I don't even
really like the pumpkin.
I just like I like this orange color.
Yeah.
Is that weird?
No, I agree.
It's a nice orange.
It is a nice orange. Hard to find a nice orange
It
sometimes.
is hard.
Sometimes they're too aggressive.
Mm.
I'm like, you're being too red orange right now. I need you to be a little more yellow orange.
Or I need you to just be more muted.
Yeah.
I need you to be less. And the orange is like, go find less. I'm going to be as orange as I want to be.
Okay, fine.
Orange, you glad I'm not a banana? No.
No, I'd like you to be a banana also.
Oh my God, today I took my kids grocery shopping.
I hear you
And I
tell
said
them
I-
that we did also get.
Yeah, as soon as I tell you the fact
Okay,
that I
fine.
was at the grocery store today and I grabbed bananas and Forrest started ripping them apart.
No, yeah, my dad used to just let his children, not me, but the smaller ones, just eat bananas throughout the thing.
Now, there are bananas, like there are take and go bananas and
Yeah.
apples, and sometimes the people at the deli give my kids cheese.
Oh, that's nice.
But I wanted all the bananas to stay together. And I
Yeah.
looked down and he's like pulling them apart. One of them he completely opened. And I put it on the belt. I was like, those are all one. If you could just weigh them all together.
They did come as one, please.
Yeah.
I know they look like individual bananas.
my toddler touched them all. But
so I do need to buy these.
yeah.
now.
But yes, we also got necklaces from the store, and they are angel number 222. That is the day our grandma passed.
222.
That's not, I mean, it is an influential day, I guess, but
In like an angel way, though, I feel.
yes.
Because
This
then
is
we
when she
looked.
became one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because then we looked at the meaning of it, and it said like right place, right time.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, everything
with
feels
it.
yeah. And I've seen the number 222 in. Well, I've said that 222, 2 or 27 or 777, like all of those 2s and 7s.
That picture on your wedding,
That picture on my wedding, I don't know if you saw it.
it's on my post, I believe.
It's on one of Jerry's, or it might be on the Ladies and Tangents
Oh,
page
yeah,
because
I
you
think it's
collabed
on the
with it.
Carousel that I put on the Ladies and Tangents. The one with the horse is the front page.
There's one, yeah. There's one of me and Corey like looking at each other and smiling in the limo, and on my phone, the only time you can see a time, it says 2:27.
Yeah, I took so many pictures of you guys in the limo, and the only one where you can see your phone, the time is 2:27.
Wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we bought those and it was really nice, and then we had just a nice interaction with the girls.
Yeah.
They were really sweet.
They gave us rocks,
They did.
gem-
I made my puppet.
gemstones.
Yeah.
And so if you see us fiddling with stuff,
Yeah, I'm gonna get my stone out.
I'm just rubbing
Rock
my
hard
stone.
right now.
I am rock hard right now with my stone.
Yeah. So crazy. Today we finally, it's goodbye to our old house. And yesterday we went and signed the papers. I had to sign them because we're legally married now. It was crazy because we've been trying to sell this house for a while.
Uh-huh.
And then it just so happened that it sold, and they were like, but since you will be legally wed like a week before Sierra, we will need you to come in to sign
Yeah.
papers because technically now you have rights to it. I'm like,
Mhm.
I could stop the sale.
You walk in and you're like, no.
Actually, I say nay. But we did it. We did all the things. And then I was like, can we go one more time and walk through it?
Mhm.
I have gone through it several times since it's been like naked and I've felt nothing. I've just been like, man, maybe this was like a good thing because every time I'm just in this house, I feel claustrophobic. It was very
Yeah.
small, which I've said multiple times. And like our new house is very different from it. So I'm like, maybe I just am not going to miss it. But I think because I knew this was going to be the last time, I sobbed.
You did?
I lit full floodgates. I had my sunglasses on. I was just like, tears.
God damn. Did anyone take a picture?
No, Corey was kind of emotional as well. So we were both just like staring at each other with smiles, but tears.
If you don't stop being selfish and
Share
not
my
document
tears?
when you're tearing like that, I want to see it.
I know. Well, it was very like I was trying to hide. Again, I was trying to hide it.
Why?
I don't know what's wrong with me.
That's a very, very emotional thing. And also, when you were saying that, I'm really trying to lean into my witchy stuff, guys, because stuff keeps happening where I'm like, oh my God, I fucking called it. Either I have become so hypervigilant in noticing patterns that I am just overly predicting things, or I'm a witch. Either really could be true, but I'm leaning witch just because it's more fun. But I heard in my head when you were saying that you got too big for the house. It's not that the house wasn't big enough. You got too big.
I agree.
For the house.
Because, and I even said that. That's very wild because as we were going through, I was like, I don't remember it being this small. When we moved in, when we went through the first time where it looked virtually the same, because everything was naked and we bought it, I remember being like, this is a huge space for us. Look at all the rooms, because I was used to an apartment.
Yeah.
I didn't ever have a yard. And so, of course, then we started talking about like memories and stuff. And I was like, in our bedroom, for the first like 3 years that we were together, we slept on a mattress on the floor. We didn't even have like any kind of and I was like, do you remember when we slept on a mattress on the floor here? Like that's for a year and a half of living in this house. And to us, it was not like, I mean, we definitely didn't have money, but we were using our money for different things. We probably could have afforded one, but we were like, do we need one? We're fine sleeping on the floor.
Yeah.
Let's just, who's in our bedroom besides us?
Right.
Doesn't matter. But yeah, it was so like, I guess I had forgotten those moments until I was back in there. And it was wild that as I was walking through that last time, it was like floods of memories of like moments in each of these rooms. And so, I just got very emotional, and it was, but it was a good emotional.
Yeah.
And I was happy about it. Yeah.
I had that when we moved out of our Canton house. It was really, really emotional. There was part of me that felt guilty because that's where, Shane and I had gotten married, and that's where we started our life.
Yes.
And that's where we brought Ollie home to. And so part of me was like, I feel like I'm leaving parts of me here, and I don't want to let go of that.
Yeah.
But like, why did I need to take those parts? Why did I need to hold on to that? Like, so.
Well, that's what he kept telling me. He was like, this isn't over. It's just the beginning. This was just the beginning, and it's bigger and better things. And this was like our start, but we're not, And I'm like, you're right.
I don't know if I'll feel that way with my current house.
Really? Well, I didn't think I would. And then there's just, there's so many moments. Because think about it. That's the house we podcasted in.
Yeah, it is.
Like, that's going to be crazy. I might get emotional when you
just
leave.
made me emotional.
I know, I was
because
going to say that might make me emotional when you leave.
I was just thinking about when we started the podcast and finding that picture from like one of the first times we were recording, and Shane had made our mic stands out of wood.
Yes.
And we were in my office.
Yeah.
We had a big L-shaped desk for you and I to both work at, and we only got to do it for like
a month.
2 months before I got pregnant.
Yeah. And then you were like, well, this is going to have to be a baby's room.
Yeah. This is going to become a nursery.
Yeah.
And now it's his big boy room.
I know. See? You think that you won't. And then it's like, I said, I think it's just because it's this finality. It's this last time.
Yeah.
And so it was a very like, it was good. But I didn't expect myself to break down like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's all I have. That's really all that happened this week, I think. I can't really remember anything too big.
I don't think that I have anything to share.
So here's what we're gonna do this week, everyone. I have to just give a little disclaimer because
you're shaking.
I'm nervous. I get nervous for these things because I feel like this is always the time we get pushed back a little bit, which we encourage communication.
Yeah.
But like, I want everyone to go. This one is gonna make some people feel defensive.
Now, here's something. I don't know what she's about to tell me. I know the topic, but she even said before we started, she's like, researching this, I felt some type of way and it upset me.
Mhm.
And she goes, and I know it's going to upset you as well, but I don't want to shy away from that.
Yes. So what we're going to talk about is the weaponization of therapy speech and just therapy speech kind of as a whole and how it's become so mainstream and normalized.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing.
Right.
However, with everything that's good, there are bad people that use it in bad ways.
Right.
But also what I want to say very, very clearly. Well, number one, I'm not a psychologist. I'm going to probably be reading a lot of these verbatim. And I also watched a video from a psychologist who I have some notes from, but I encourage you to look at both of these things and take your own assessment. But these are two, I believe they're both clinical psychologists.
Okay.
But I'll give you their full whatever, and we'll link.
Yeah, everything will be in the description.
Everything.
You'll have access to all that.
Yeah. So this is not, I might share a couple of my opinions, but what I'm going to read or talk about is their opinions and kind of their research about it. But a lot of it is going to be opinion based because there's not a lot of research on this because it's so new.
Right.
And the other thing I want to say is that if you feel a defense because you're like, I do this, one of the things that it talks about, and I don't want to get too into it right now, but it's kind of like the overgeneralization of like words like toxic or abuse and things like that. And the fact that everybody has capabilities of being toxic. I mean, every single person can be and probably will be toxic at some point in their life. And I don't think that means you're a bad person.
Right.
So if you hear something that is like, oh my God, I think I do that, or I think I've done that, please don't feel like what we're saying is that you're a bad person. I don't think you are. I don't think I am. I know that I've done some of this stuff.
Right.
And you don't know what you don't know. And so I think just learning and trying to be better, you're not a bad person.
Right.
Unless you're doing things maliciously to hurt people.
Or you're actively refusing
to learn.
Look inward. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also want to say that victims, a lot of times, this when you were just talking about overgeneralization of things like toxic and abuse, I also know that if you have ever been a victim of certain kinds of abuse, oftentimes people struggle to even say like, yes, this was abuse. And so I don't want anyone to doubt themselves if they're like, oh, maybe I overgeneralize it or I overuse it. Like, just understand this is a conversation.
Yes.
There is no definitive anything. Everything is so situational and nuanced.
That's one of the things that the individualism is huge here. And that is kind of one of the things that they talk about is like, we can't make everything a blanket statement.
Yes. So it's kind of like when you're scrolling on TikTok and those tarot readings come up and they're like, take what resonates and leave the rest.
Yes.
And as always, guys, we don't know dick about shit.
That's the truth. Yeah.
We're just doing our best having a conversation because I do feel that
this is very important.
It's very important. And I also think that we specifically have a responsibility to also talk about this because we talk about...
we use therapy speech quite often.
Exactly. I feel like it's important for us every now and again to check ourselves.
Totally.
Because we probably have overused or misused something and we try to correct ourselves. But at the same time, having a designated time to focus on this, I think is going to be beneficial to all of us.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So the topic started... I mean, really becoming a big topic of like the weaponization of therapy speech around the time, allegedly, that Jonah Hill allegedly sent text messages, allegedly to his then girlfriend at the time. And he was stating what his boundaries were to her. You can go Google them. I'm not going to read them all. There was so many.
Right.
But that started a lot of this talk and discourse about what is therapy speech, what is, the weaponization of it, and
what is a boundary, whether this is appropriate or not, and whether this person should respect a boundary or whether this person is misusing the terminology of a boundary.
Yes. So a lot of this is going to come from this Mind Body Green article, but it's written by a doctor of clinical psychology, Perpetua Neo.
Okay.
I'm probably butchering that. I'm so sorry. Perpetua Neo. Okay. She's a doctor in clinical psychology. So basically, she explains right off the bat, what is therapy speak? So if you don't know what we're talking about, therapy speak is when people use psychological, therapeutic, or mental health language in day-to-day conversations. So we're talking terms like boundaries, abuse,
gaslighting,
narcissist, psychopath, trauma. And those are thrown around, and we're more likely to share about our mental health experiences from anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, autism, things like that, which is, I think, a good thing that the internet has done, where we've kind of opened the conversation and it's been less of a boogeyman type of thing. It's more of, oh yeah, this happens to me as well.
Right.
Sometimes.
So sorry to cut in.
Go ahead.
But I think the reason, yes, obviously things have their positive and negative. So I understand when some people are like, well, we have to be careful about self-diagnosing, and we have to be careful about misinformation that's being spread about these diagnoses, because they can sometimes be more harmful than good. But I think what you're saying in that is people with mental health disorders used to be, or disabilities, were like locked in rooms and like sent away and lobotomized and
termed to one thing, which is crazy.
Yes.
And that was it. And it was like, you're not normal.
Exactly. And so I think we've come a long way with normalizing not being normal.
Yes.
And now it's more so like, okay, but we have to be careful.
Yes. So there is such a thing as healthy therapy speak. And this is often like open to reflection, review, and education, and it is thoughtfully used. These are all important. Intent here is what is one of the most important things when we're talking about this. And even if you are telling yourself you might be using it thoughtfully, you have to really, really dive deep into why you might be speaking to someone the way you're speaking to someone.
Right.
Okay.
And I also think that, again, sorry, I keep cutting you off.
It's fine.
But I also think that intent versus impact, which I never really clocked or connected those two before. Drew Offwallow posted something and she got some kickback on it that she was like welcoming and wanted to acknowledge and apologize for. And I remember in her video, she was like, my intent was never to do that. I apologize. And she goes, but it doesn't matter what my intent was, because the impact of my words were negative. And so it doesn't matter what I meant by it. The impact was negative. So, and I think with things happening in the government, people will be like, well, they didn't mean it that way, or this wasn't meant to be like this. Okay, but the impact of these words
is
goes
what's important
beyond that.
Yeah.
So I think in this circumstance as well, it's like, okay, maybe your intent is to just advocate for yourself, but what's the impact on the other end of those words?
That part. And that's what you need to be mindful of. I mean, truly, if you do have to be advocating for yourself, but you do have to be mindful of everyone else in the world you interact with. If you want to be somebody who's not a dick to other people, I guess, in the nicest way that I can put that.
Or just understanding of the fact that you are a person who has a relationship with another person who is like equal to you in personhood. You know what I mean?
And that person has feelings as well.
And reasons as to why they are who they are and do what they do. So again, I think this is, again, the whole nuance part of it is like, it's so circumstantial, situational. It's not.
Please don't take everything that we say with like 100% what it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to sympathize with an abuser right now to be like, oh, we'll understand that. Yeah, maybe he hurt you, but his daddy was mean to him. And it's like, no, that's not what I mean.
Not the case. And we'll get into that.
Yeah.
We will get into a little bit of that part of it. Here, everyday language is more intentional, and the use of therapy speak may be done only when defined for the other party, or if there is an understanding that both parties understand the concept discussed. I think this is a big part of it, is that let's say you're talking to your 60-year-old parents, grandparents about a boundary. Do they know what the fuck you're talking about? Honestly, do they know what you're saying? Right. And if not, the miscommunication there can be what causes a lot of turmoil.
Right.
So I think maybe defining that for them before you put that out there,
Right.
or, knowing whether or not they have that is going to help hold a boundary firm and also give you less pushback.
Right.
If they understand what you're saying and where you're coming from. Again, take this off. I'm not going to say that every single time, but do that.
Please understand to do that.
So examples include, how would you like me, this is quotes, how would you like me to show up for you versus just popping in unannounced and insisting you're doing something for their own good? Do you need support to solve or a listening ear versus going for the jugular and giving unsolicited opinions or advice? I have a suggestion / thought. Would you like me to say it?
Yeah.
Because some people don't need.
I am so guilty of that.
Same. That's why these were like, fuck,
I'm guilty.
Do this.
I'm guilty
Same.
as fuck because I think that I know everything. And I think I'm so smart and so wise.
And I think I'm helping.
Yes.
I think I'm helping.
And I know that there are times when Shane wants my support and I don't give it to him in the way that he needs. And in those moments, I am battling with myself to be like, do you not want to do it the way that he wants you to do it because you think the way you do it is better? Or are you oftentimes, if I'm being really fucking blatantly honest,
this is good. This is why I like this.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to engage with you and have this conversation.
Not to.
Yes.
It is. It's less work, and that's easier. And so
because sometimes I'm battling my own feelings, and I'm like, I don't want to do this.
I don't want to sit in this right now because it doesn't feel comfortable, and I don't want to be uncomfortable right now.
And then that ultimately, I understand, makes him feel neglected or left alone in those moments. And like, I get it, but I don't want to.
Yeah. However, what we will talk about in a little bit, not your situation, but I know other people who might be hearing that and thinking pendulum swinging one way.
Yes.
You don't owe anyone a free therapy session. You don't owe anyone a free venting session. So if that is becoming too much of a burden, you have every right to be like, I can't do this right now. As long as you're not just shutting that person down for just to be like, go fuck yourself, kind of, I guess. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do just want to say that. Don't beat yourself up too bad just yet.
No, just yet. You will in a little bit because I definitely know you're a piece of shit in other ways. No, but the whole pendulum thing is my biggest issue of never knowing how to find the middle or when to sway farther in one direction.
I know.
It's a lot.
This one is one that I have an issue with and that I'm really, really trying hard to. And I want everyone out there to be mindful of as well because I see this on the internet a lot. Ready? Quote. Based on what you've been telling me, this person seems to be doing something bad instead of immediately proclaiming that person as toxic, abusive, or narcissistic. That I feel like I see so much. I am guilty of it myself. I have seen people do it to us.
Yep.
And it's just wild, especially when I see it on the internet. When it's like, hey, you don't fucking know that person. Yeah. That is such a bold thing to claim about someone or something when that is such a heavy claim to put on somebody, I guess.
Right.
In a situation that it's like, are you a doctor?
And it creates a sweeping label for someone as well.
Which is you are all bad and there's nothing good to you.
Right.
And I hate that.
I know that something that I started putting in practice, which was uncharacteristic for me for a really long time, because it feels good when someone is complaining for you to complain about a person or an entity or something with them. It feels good to jump in like, oh, I'm connecting with you because we both are annoyed and hate this, even if I don't really know anything about it. Like, I want to show my support for you by being pissed on your behalf.
Yeah.
But something I have started doing, because that no longer feels good for me, is saying, I don't know who this person is, so I don't feel comfortable commenting on it.
Totally.
That's
good.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know these to be true. I can actually understand that maybe with more information I would feel differently, but it's not fair to this person for me to like dogpile on them about this.
And a lot of times it's really easy too, if you've had a similar situation, to immediately label that person as the exact same as the person who you've had that situation with. And I don't think that's so difficult.
Yeah. Because you want to relate to them.
I do. And I've done this too. So I don't want you to, I want everyone right now, take a deep breath. Okay. And any shame or anything you're feeling, let that go.
Yeah,
we're not doing that. We're not
doing
doing shame right now. This is not a shameful thing. This is just an open conversation. I don't want anybody to feel any shame with anything they're hearing or taking in. Okay.
Yep. Because no one can see you.
No
one can hear you.
You're good. You're just having a moment with yourself right now. Okay. Are you ready? But I have seen that a lot where people have taken what we've said, what we've done, what our partners have done, things like that, and immediately labeled it as something. And it's like, you can't do that.
Yep.
That's not a nice thing to do.
Specifically,
it's not a fair thing to do.
Tell me if you want me to take this out or not. But specifically, there was one TikTok that we posted, and Sierra was talking about an argument that her and Corey had. And all of the comments in that thread was like, Sierra's toxic.
Yep.
And I'm the one, I wasn't even there, made a joke about getting naked, and not because I was trying to encourage anyone to use their sexuality to derail a conversation or like avoid communication. That was my joke, that again, impact versus intent, intent versus impact, was to say I find it attractive when somebody is emotionally mature and able to communicate. Now, obviously, the internet does what the internet does, but they
took that 1 minute clip and they ran the fuck with it.
Labeling us as toxic, said our husbands should leave us, said that we were the most
manipulative, controlling.
Yes. And
she's trying to manipulate him with her body. By the way, in that section, I was being extremely vulnerable about the fact that was a toxic moment for me. It was something I was learning from, and it was something that it is hard to share with the world when you're not perfect, and let the world see that I'm a human being who made a mistake that night. Right. And I hurt somebody that loves me, who I love very deeply. And for the internet to double the fuck down after that had been resolved with the person who it was about was a lot.
Yeah.
But also I wanted to talk about this. Let me know if you want to take this out.
Can I pause and
Go
do
ahead,
that one more time? Just because in these moments, and I'm sure I will agree with whatever you're about to say, it is hard to help other people face parts of themselves that they don't like if you yourself are telling them how ugly they are. You know what I mean? So like, if you can in that moment say, I was toxic, I did something I disliked, and I am learning and I'm growing and I'm going to be better
I'm trying to heal.
It helps give people a roadmap as to how they can get out of moments like that themselves and not beat themselves up and just say, I guess I'm a piece of shit. I guess I'm just toxic. I guess that's how I am.
And it's also, it is so much easier for people to lean into the fact that I'm a piece of shit, I'm bad, if that's what you're telling them. Right. If you're like, hey, there's absolutely no hope for you, person that I don't know at all.
Right.
So just absolutely, you should die or whatever the fuck. Because what were you saying?
Your partner
should be alone forever until you're miserable and you are just done with the world.
Fix yourself before involving him in your toxic
I was
shit.
like, hey, I'm trying. That's the whole fucking point. That was the point of it. Is that like I am trying.
This doesn't feel helpful.
But
either.
and it wasn't. That's the other thing. Are you trying to be helpful, or are you trying to be hurtful? Are you using some of that hurt you're feeling inside and pushing it out into the world onto other people?
Right. Because they probably saw that and could relate to something in their own life and wishes they could have said that to that person.
But also, what does that do? Here's what I want to talk about, because there have been so many people who have asked me, like, have you had a run-in with the person who has abused you, with the person who's done this horrible stuff to you? You know, did you have that moment where you were like, showed you? And honestly, never. Do I want to? Never. I am a better person for not having done. I have never done anything after the fact of our relationship to intentionally hurt him, and I never will. Because for me, what does that do? Right. If I would do that, what would that make me feel? Nothing.
And how would that make you different?
It didn't help. It wouldn't help me at all. All I would be doing is hurting him. And to me, that does nothing. I have no wishes to intentionally hurt anybody, including people who hurt me. And it's really hard at the time that you're in it. Trust me, I did things in the middle of that relationship. But in this moment, I am healing. I feel mostly healed.
Right.
I feel like the best thing I could do is just become the best version of myself, because That's like the greatest.
That's what you deserve.
Yes.
You deserve peace.
And I don't care what happens in his life. I really don't. I truly don't. So I don't wish any of that on anybody.
Well, now I can't stop thinking, what was the thing that you were like, you can take this out if you want?
Oh, well, we'll get into that. I will talk about that in a minute.
Circle back.
Yes. Johnny circle back.
That was something that we didn't completely explain to you guys in last week's episode.
No way to.
Well, we started saying circle back in the car with Noah.
Yeah.
And then you said old Johnny Circleback. And
I said I went to college with Johnny.
I said I went to prom with Johnny Circleback. And you said I smoked weed with Johnny Circleback. And I go, is that why I was alone at prom? He was smoking weed with you.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so we just kept going on about this whole bit about this imaginary Johnny Circleback thing.
I did tell Noah that was his real dad. I told him he was Noah Circleback.
Yeah.
Of the famous Circlebacks. He's inheriting a great fortune.
Yes.
Thank God my child is old enough to laugh with us and like get our bits. He was laughing so hard he was crying in the back over Johnny Circleback. Okay. So weaponized therapy speak, which we've kind of talked about a little bit, is therapy speak that is wielded to bolster your own stance, or worse, used to manipulate, control, or hurt somebody.
Right.
So this is really where the Jonah Hill thing came in. Although I will say, and I don't know a lot about it outside of that specific situation, so don't come for me if you're like, he's an abuser. I don't know that. But from just the text messages alone, I don't know that I would label him as a horrible person. I do feel like he was being controlling.
Yes.
And this is so I watched another YouTube video, and the woman who posted it, her name was Dr. Anna.
Okay.
And I have notes. I'm so sorry why this is going to be. I have notes that I wrote out while watching this video, and then I left my fucking notepad at home. So Corey had to send me the notes. But in this video, she says, while yes, we all have a right to set whatever boundaries we want for ourselves, I think we are getting to a place in our culture where it's considered that we don't even have to do any sort of introspection or reflection on why our boundaries are the way that they are.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of, hold on, let me see, is this boundary even appropriate to have? Is this maybe a controlling boundary? And at what point is a line crossed? So I think what's important when you're setting a boundary is to think, for example, Jonah Hill, what it seemed to me was he set that boundary out of self-esteem issues. And instead of looking inward at the fact that he has self-esteem issues, at the fact that he is allegedly, at the fact that he maybe has some jealousy issues, at the fact that he, I think that stems from a place of early relationships and
but also potentially some internalized misogyny.
For sure. So out of all of those things, I think where he went wrong, outside of thinking he could control another person, is he put that work on her.
Yes.
He put the responsibility on her.
Yes.
And that's what I wanted to really point out in this, is I think when people set boundaries, sometimes,
or expectations,
or anything, I think what they're doing is, I don't have to do the work right now because I'm putting it on you to
need to prove it to me.
Yes, where it's like, but you also need to do the work to ask yourself, why do I have these boundaries?
Why
is
am I
this
reacting this way?
Boundary to me to have.
Yes.
And you also need to do that work. Same thing where I know that sometimes people will be like, I'm going to get loud and mad right now because I'm anxious. I'm anxious. You can have anxiety all day. You can have depression all day. Mm-hmm. Your mental illness is not an excuse to treat other people like shit, even if you're communicating that you're going to. Now, what you can say is, I'm feeling really anxious right now, and I know that I'm going to be, you did it great. Right off the bat, when you and I started working together, you had a moment where you did this phenomenally, where you said, I'm feeling anxious right now, and I know I'm going to take it out on you. I'm going to go in the other room. And you went into the other room. You didn't it wasn't towards me, but So you walked into the other room and you just took a couple breaths and you came back out and you were like, I'm sorry. This was all really overwhelming for me. I'm okay with doing it now, but I didn't want to take that out on you.
Yeah.
And that to me felt you didn't lash out. You didn't get mad or yell. And instead of being like, I'm triggered, so I'm going to scream.
Right.
which is not helpful, which is still hurtful.
Yes.
You telling me that you're going to do it doesn't make it hurt any less.
Yeah.
You said
or doesn't give you a free pass
to do it. Not at all.
I let you know I was going to scream.
Nope. Or I'm going to treat you like shit.
Right.
Doesn't work like that. But if you can tell that it's coming on and you can maybe communicate in a way that's like, I know I need a little space right now. I'm going to go take a couple deep breaths. That I think is where it becomes helpful and not harmful.
Yeah. I used to have to like lock myself in my bedroom sometimes whenever it was really, really bad. Like
I do too.
Right before I started going to therapy, and Shane would get home and I would immediately run to my room, close the door, and I would sit with my back against the door and start hysterically crying because I was so
gotta let those emotions
overwhelmed out. And it's not that I don't want my kids to see me have emotions, but I have been pretty good at being able to tell when my emotions are going to be less of an example and more of a
outburst.
Yeah, it's going to cause more damage than it is understanding.
That's good. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's good. That's really healthy. Okay, so here's some examples of some weaponized therapy things, okay? This is what we were just talking about. Missing the concepts of boundary and trauma. So boundaries refer to your, quote, hell no's, aka the things you are unwilling to accept about how people treat you. Boundaries do not refer to how you can package your dislikes and disapprovals into controlling someone else's life or how they do things.
Right.
You can't say my boundary is that I don't even, again, I'm going to
Sorry, I remembered one I could use if you wanted.
Go ahead.
So, Shane, whenever we were redoing our bedroom in our current house, he was like, I'm not painting. And I said, okay, you don't have to paint. I'll paint the room. And so I started painting the room, but then it was bedtime for the kids and I had just a little bit more to do. And the kids only wanted me to put them down. And I said, can you just go take over? So I'm almost done painting. Can you just do this? And he said, I set a boundary that I'm not painting. And I'm like, that's not how boundaries work.
No, right.
Now, if he doesn't want to paint it, he doesn't have to paint it. That's fine. That's not a boundary.
Don't phrase it like that.
Yes.
Because and that's the other thing that this Dr. Anna, who I watched the video on, was like, therapy speak works, especially whenever you're either one, actively in therapy and going a lot, or you are a therapist yourself. Otherwise, a lot of times people maybe will misuse it because they don't understand it. You have to understand, psychologists, they're going through 10 plus years of schooling, plus continued education to make sure they're using things correctly.
Right. And that's the thing is Shane genuinely just wanted to say, I don't want to paint the wall.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that people think that they're not allowed to say when they don't want to do something.
They're not allowed to say no.
I'm not allowed to say no. So in order to not do something or to avoid saying no and feeling like a bad person, I'm going to put it behind a boundary. Now I don't have to do it. And
now
I don't
have to respect me, which is not the case, by the way. It's not. People don't have to respect your boundaries at all. The boundary is less of a you have to do this and more of a I will do this. Okay? So your boundary is on you to enforce and on you to, what the boundary has to have is consequences behind it, which is, okay, if you are continuously mean to me, if you continuously harm me, I'm taking myself away from the situation. Now, if you don't take yourself away when that continues to happen, the boundary is, what the fuck did you do it for? You know what I mean? You're then to me, all that says is you were just trying to control that person, which I get. I do.
Right.
Because they should be nice to you. But you can't control other people.
Right.
So the boundary is only there. So that's the
intent. What was the intent behind those words? Was it to actually
remove your have
a boundary, protect yourself?
For yourself? Or was it to try to change that person's actions?
Right.
And I wish we could sometimes with shitty people, but you can't. And so the boundary is there for you and you alone. That is it. And that has to be in your mind when you make it. The other thing that she said in this thing, which I hope
the video,
boundaries are framed as this be-all, end-all, inherently valid construct, regardless of their content, that everyone must respect our boundaries or else see you later.
I'm never painting a single room ever again. That's my boundary.
And that's not the case. That's not the case.
I feel so bad. Honey, I'm not making fun of you. You're never going to listen to this. That's not what I mean. I'm sorry that I use that as an example, but it's a good example.
Yeah, and it's a harmless example as well. So it just goes to show that literally anyone who you can think is as emotionally intelligent as anybody can use these words incorrectly, and that can be where it's like, maybe I need to take a step back and do I actually know what this means?
Yeah, and like, would I say he was weaponizing it?
No.
Maybe squirt gun level weapon, but like
he was just using it incorrectly.
He was using it incorrectly, and that's how it starts, is using stuff like that incorrectly.
Yes. So, and then this person says, lately I've been seeing everything blamed on trauma. Not everything leads to trauma, and not everyone develops trauma from the same event.
Yes.
By definition, trauma is an event that is deeply disturbing or unsettling to the nervous system, so that your brain and body keep re-experiencing the same situations/symptoms repeatedly as if it is still stuck back at the first event.
Mm-hmm.
So big T trauma often happens when we have been at risk of losing our lives, witnessing someone else lose their life, or have been through abuse. Repeated incidents, often cause CPTSD, referring to complicated PTSD.
Right.
Small T trauma develops from common life experiences like bereavements, job loss, and even seemingly joyous ones like job promotions or moves and things like that. Okay, number 2. Calling everyone an abuser, every relationship toxic, or even the overuse of the phrase gaslighting. While we should not have to ask someone to prove that they've been abused or hurt, we similarly should not rush to brand everything abusive or toxic. I wanted to wait until this moment to bring up what I was going to bring up when we were talking about that, which was, again, if you want to cut this out, you can. But I think it's enough time has passed to say it. And if this person still listens, I wish you wouldn't, to be honest, because I have a lot of feelings.
Okay.
The reason why we had to stop and kind of close ourselves off and our families off of the guys being on the podcast as much, my family being on, like kids and stuff. We got a comment, and this is like such a small one-time comment, but honestly, it has like stuck with me because of where I was in that moment in my life and what I have been through, and also because it felt like gaslighting at the time.
Yeah.
Somebody commented under an instance of us having the guys on for a Valentine's Day episode and says, "Is it just me, or does Corey seem low-key toxic?"
Mm-hmm. And this comment was almost 3 years ago.
Yeah. So we weren't engaged. We weren't nothing. And it was such a weird thing because he had only been on twice at that point. You would have seen 2 hours into his life. And for you to brand him like that. But to me, I was like, this is not a big fucking deal. I'm just going to delete the comment because I have that right. And it is on my social media. So I deleted it. Didn't think twice about it. Right after that, they commented again and said, Sierra deleting my comment kind of proves my point. Mm-hmm. So I fucking went ahead and messaged that person. And I said, I don't know why you feel the need to like comment these things, but I don't need to... Like, his family sees that. He will see that. And, like, I don't want it out there. It's somebody I care and love about. And, like, you're wrong.
Right.
And you don't know them. And that's mean. You're being fucking mean.
Well, especially because the way that it was written was, like, anyone else wanna...
In such a, like, mean girl fashion that was like, am I right, guys? Like, let's talk shit in a public platform. Yeah. And I'm like, this is weird. So,
well, and especially because, again, you said that at that point they had only really heard from him for 2 hours, and you know him, and you know his heart, and you also know that he was so anxious.
Oh my God,
he was so nervous to be on it. He was so scared he was going to ruin it for you, and he was going to do the wrong thing. He was in his head during it, afterwards, and so it's really disheartening to know that someone worked really hard to overcome some of their fears and anxieties to show up and support you. Yeah. Only to have
we begged him to do it. He didn't want to. We kind of forced him to. Yeah, to have them like pick apart him in that way and not even say why they thought that. Just completely put that label on him. He's toxic because why? Because I say so.
And it's the same reason I dislike people commenting things like that, labeling something, because other people may not watch or may not listen. They may just read the comments to get an understanding. And now you have already tainted someone's vision of someone with the words you've used.
Yeah. And it was so bizarre, too, because I thought that would just end it. Like, hey, you're kind of being mean. That was a mean comment. I don't want it up there, so I deleted it. I didn't even have to give them an explanation, but I did because I felt bad that I deleted it. They went on this big, long rant about how, oh, that proves even more, like basically using what they knew about my past relationship to tell me that I didn't know him at all. And like when I say gaslit, that's why they were like, I know you better.
Trying to control
and you
your
don't
reality.
Understand that this is what he is and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? It was so bizarre. So we ended up just blocking the person. And again, if you still listen, I hope that you
feel differently, have grown
something, because that was such an upsetting moment that I think about constantly and that I want to now protect him from. Which is weird because he's an adult man and I shouldn't have to feel that.
No, right. But you love him.
Yeah, and I do. And I know him more than anybody.
And that's another thing, as someone with a platform, we are very conscious of the fact that we don't ever want to weaponize our audience. The same reason we don't want to weaponize therapy speech. And if we fuck up, we want to own it.
Why
and
I
learn.
have never said my ex's name, why I will never out him, why I don't say anything about anything that could detail who he was. Even though I know you'll come from a good place if you do it, I don't want anyone going to him. I don't want anything negative that's thrown at him.
That's also
on
why
my
we
behalf.
never told anybody whose podcast we were on in LA.
Yes.
We never named them. And it's because
I don't want that.
Right. It doesn't do any good for anybody.
Yeah. So there's that. And
But
I think that is done. Sorry.
We've also said before, too, that just because there were people in our lives that were, we would label abusive, toxic, or traumatic to us in some type of way, one, oftentimes that's been confirmed by professionals. But two, we also acknowledge that somebody who could be toxic, abusive, whatever, to me, could be totally different to someone else.
I have done horribly toxic things to people in my past. And if you went and interviewed them about me, they would have probably not great things to say about me.
Yep.
And they could probably label me one of any two ways. Now, do I believe that's who I am anymore? No. Have I done the work to not be that person anymore? Yes. And do I know now why I did the things I did? Yes. Does that make it okay?
Right.
No. But I would hate to be labeled as forever abusive, toxic, whatever, because of that one moment when I was very young and very emotionally unintelligent.
Right.
So it says, we all have toxic behaviors after all, and sometimes even the best and most mindful of us do hurtful things. What matters is that with awareness, we work to repair the damage and make the relationship stronger. When someone is abusive, it means that they are consistently acting in ways that hurt you mentally, physically, sexually, financially, emotionally, and spiritually. Further, there is little attempt to repair that, but rather you're told that you're crazy or sensitive. Any repair is piecemeal and transient, and you will pay for it eventually. And chances are that this person is doing it deliberately or gets kicks out of it in some way. So that's where you can tell the difference.
You know, when some people are like moving the goalpost.
Yeah.
They're wanting this from you and then changing, it's not good enough.
Yes.
And it's almost like this. It's so nuanced. It's so complicated. Because there's situations where you can create and establish boundaries that are absolutely necessary, and you can hold those boundaries. But again, that goes back to what's your intent of them, or even your expectations or your requests of a person, saying like, this is how I want to be loved in a relationship. This is how I want someone to show up for me. And if you don't do those things, you don't get access to me. That's fine.
Then hold that though.
Hold it.
Because
but
Jonah
if the
Hill
person
went into
starts
it
doing those things, and then now you change.
Well, because the
or they weren't good enough.
What happened was Jonah Hill said those were his boundaries for a relationship always. However, he entered that relationship with that woman knowing she did those things.
Right.
She never didn't do those.
Right.
So that's where it lies a little bit. You became controlling, was that those weren't your boundaries. Those were,
and if they were, then
you didn't hold them in the beginning.
Right.
Because you entered into that. and then you decided to start holding them. You can't do that.
Right.
Well, you can, but then, okay, that's on you to leave the relationship then.
Right.
You're not going to...
You don't get to tell the other person
you need to change.
be, how to be. Yes.
So similarly, when someone gaslights you, they're intentionally screwing with your take on reality, so you stop trusting yourself and you trust them instead. So someone accidentally giving you the wrong information or a one-off lie is not gaslighting you necessarily. Yes. So there's the difference. And that's why I felt like that person, and I'm not going to say even that they specifically were, but it felt so much like gaslighting to me because it was like, how are you going to tell me
who he is?
Who I am?
Right.
Because they were saying like, I know you. They even said the phrase at one point, I believe, that like, I know you and this is why I'm like worried about you and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, you don't know me.
But you don't.
You think you do. But
you know what I allow you to see.
Exactly.
And yes, a lot of that is vulnerable and it is all true, but it's a fraction of the entirety of me and my relationship.
Exactly. Okay, we'll do 2 more, just small parts, and then we'll go to the end of it. Because there's so many of these. Yeah. Again, I'm going to link this so if you want to read it in its entirety, but these are just the ones I think are
here's
important.
A harmless example of real life gaslighting.
Okay.
Frogman and all his tadpoles. Okay? I know you guys don't listen. All right? And if you are friends of Frogman, you're probably a girl at that school. Mm-hmm. And I want to say this to you. If you think that those people will not turn on you in a second.
That part.
They will.
They will.
They will. Please do not dogpile people to get other people to like you. Now, again, maybe I'm talking to absolutely nobody, but I saw that. I saw that there were girls from the school who were
I saw myself in those girls, man.
And I felt sick because I was used so many times by people because I was either a body to like make the gang look bigger or I was the mouthpiece who was the loudest and the meanest. Mm-hmm. But none of those people invited me to their parties. No. Nobody invited me to hang out. I didn't go to the movies with them.
They don't genuinely care about you.
No.
They're using you.
Yes. So again, maybe I'm talking to absolutely nobody, but just in the off case that I am talking to someone, I wanted to say that.
But you could be talking to other people who don't know Frogman and maybe are just in high school and maybe are having an experience like that. So
that's true.
I think that...
But Frogman, who did hit our friend's car, okay?
Because there are witnesses.
Because there are witnesses and cameras at Walmart. And a note. We've seen the note that was left on the car. All of them kept commenting, you hit Frogman. We have the tapes. We have the tapes.
There's cameras. We saw it.
Which was all a lie.
And we kept saying, like, hey, let's see the tapes then. Which
I know they were just kids.
You should have seen our DMs because we got the real story.
Oh, yeah. But they tagged us in something that said gaslighting isn't real. You're just crazy. So to me, that's real gaslighting.
It is.
It didn't really affect us.
No,
but it's an example. I'm making an example of it now to have a bunch of people come over and try to tell us what reality was and then literally calling us crazy.
Yes.
That's gaslighting.
It is, absolutely.
Someone telling you their perception of a story of an experience that's different from yours isn't gaslighting.
Oh my God, you're hitting the nail on the next one. Okay, so this says number 3, the next harmful thing is gaslighting you to put you in your place. There are people who might use therapy speak. Now, this is exactly what they did, but there are people who might use therapy speak to appear intellectually or morally superior or foist mental health diagnoses upon you in order to put you in your place. My ex used to do this. For instance, this is your anxiety talking. You're an anxious person and therefore blank. That is gaslighting, especially if you're not a mental health professional.
Yep.
My ex used to tell me all the time, you're doing this because you're depressed. This is your depression, blah, blah, blah. That's why you're not a whatever. Whatever I was worried about not being, he was like, you're not. And this is why. And you shouldn't talk to those people because they think you are crazy because you symptom of my depression. Okay.
Right.
So like, things like that were very much
used to isolate you.
And controlling who I could be around and whatever. Because in my head, I was like, oh my God, I am the crazy one. And they don't want to be around me because they know that I'm this crazy psycho person, which none of that was true. But yeah, that's just another example. This is the last one. Here we go.
I also feel like, sorry, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or if it's going to connect to something else, but I feel like sometimes when people are using therapy speech too, and they're speaking in absolutes, like you never do this or you've always been this way, is another way.
It is.
I don't know if gaslighting is the right word, but almost to like manipulate your perception.
Well, there is, there is something like that. I'm not going to go into it, but it says diagnosing or psychoanalyzing someone and then being sanctimonious or displaying them like a circus freak. So basically telling them who they are, what they are, or using personality as an excuse is another one. Your blank isn't an excuse to be this, or you're a this, and that's why you do this.
Right. You can't label people in absolutes in that way, because realistically saying always and never can't be true. No. Like,
and that's also putting them in a box where they can't grow.
Right.
Or like, who the fuck are you to do that?
Because, okay, let's say this. If I say to you, Sierra, you never do this. Let's water the plants.
Yeah.
You never water the plants.
But I have before. Yes.
No, you've never watered them.
Yeah.
But you're sitting here and you go, I literally have though. And I remember doing it and I could explain it.
I've never seen you. And you've never, and you won't.
Or even if I decided that doing it that one time, 2 times, however many times wasn't enough, then you never do it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
That is, I feel like that falls into this type of realm.
I agree. Okay, this is the last one that I'm going to do. But again, there are so many more. So please go look at this because I think it's important. I think it will help you be a better person if that's something that you want. I think it's something we should all strive for. Okay. Number 4, you have to help me stay accountable. Whoop. So this is kind of where it was also like, this person even says like, my friends will basically treat me like a free therapist because I am one. And I'm like, hey, I'm off the clock. I'm
off the clock, homie.
My dentist husband for a root canal at dinner. Like that's not what we're doing.
And my dentist husband isn't a dentist. That would be weird.
100%. Okay, here we go. Accountability. Accountability is a great thing when the party in question is actually interested in staying accountable and has enough integrity and responsibility to live up to it. It says dark personality types love to wield it to their own ends. They aren't actually interested in changing, nor is it possible for them to change. However, by telling you that you have to help them stay accountable to be a better person, that hooks you in more, and therefore the responsibility now lies on you. I don't have to do as much work because now it's your responsibility.
That's
and if I don't.
Another thing that I've been starting to do is when people say like, because it sounds like a compliment. It sounds like a compliment and saying,
I need you to help me.
I learned so much from you. It's like that, but that's not my job.
That's not my job.
That's not my job.
And it's not, and it's
right.
That's emotional labor from me.
And that's why it's hard for me to differentiate with Shane sometimes, where I'm like, I am your wife. I am your partner. I do want to be there for you to support you, but I'm can't not your therapist. This way. This is not something I can do.
Totally.
But sometimes I don't want
to. No. It says you think that because decent people are committed to accountability that they would be too, but when this personality type commits another transgression and you call them out on it the way that they ask you to, they'll tell you things like, I can't help it, or I can't promise you I can change because I don't know if I can. And then it feels like Groundhog Day all over again, except now you have the responsibility lied on you of how horrible it all feels.
Right.
So that's,
again, nuanced devil's advocate here. I do think that sometimes when people say they want to change, to expect that they're never going to fall back into old patterns is unrealistic.
100%. But that's not your responsibility.
But that's not your responsibility.
That's where
you have to hold your boundary with things. And even if it's,
and it doesn't have to be like I'm going to leave the situation, but it could be like, hey, if you talk to me like that, we're shutting down, the conversation is over, and I'm not going to tolerate that. And that can be what that boundary is. Hey, I'm not going to let you speak to me this way.
Right.
So if you do again, just know I'm going to leave the room.
Right.
Boom. And then you have to enforce that. And it's not going to be like, no, you better not. It's okay, just be prepared then to leave the room when that happens.
Because in situations like that, like the example of it being during a miscommunication or an argument, the likelihood that someone takes one argument to all of a sudden learn how to have a disagreement,
it can't. Yeah,
it's not
realistic.
Yeah, so it's up to
takes
you
time
to decide how long
you
want to support someone when they're working through those things.
Definitely. Okay, so what to do if someone is using weaponized therapy speak to you, I guess. So this is the number one thing. Trust your gut. If you feel like something is off, then it probably is. A lot of victims of toxic people will tell you that they feel something was wrong from the start, but they rationalize it over and over again. So don't do that. Know you have the permission to say no gracefully. Most people who are afraid to say no tend to believe otherwise. This is the therapist speaking. When people pressure me to be a free therapist, for instance, I tell them this is a privilege I reserve for my clients. Oof. To respect my energy and their investment, I do not step into therapist mode when off duty. If you think this person might be weaponizing therapy speak unintentionally, you can educate them. And starting with, from what I understand, blank, like gaslighting, refers to
blank.
This.
Yep.
Therefore, I don't know if this applies here. What do you think? And then if you think they're being deliberate, here's some phrases you can say. Quote, this isn't something I'd like to discuss with you. And then you can add, when I do, I'll let you know. Quote, you can ask me questions, and if I don't want to answer, I'll let you know. Or quote, I already have professionals I pay to deal with these things. Let's spend our time together talking about something we both enjoy.
Ooh.
And this she said that's her personal favorite. And then if need be, if you truly believe that person is a toxic person, it's okay to just disengage altogether. You don't owe them anything. But again, that's your responsibility to disengage. Don't berate them. Don't call them this, that, and the other. Don't make them, you don't need to do harm to them to remove yourself.
Right.
And that's, I say that from someone who did remove themselves.
I say it as someone who used to cause harm with my words.
Yes, you don't need to necessarily to heal yourself. It's
or
not
make a point.
No, it doesn't do any good to anybody.
Right.
And then here's the biggest thing that we'll end on is how to avoid using weaponized therapy speak yourself. Because again, it's very easy to do and we've all done it, I feel. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's an overgeneralization, but I think we all on this couch at least have done it. I can say.
Definitely.
I can say confidently.
Yeah.
A one-off statement that someone might be acting differently due to something going on in their life is empathy and awareness based on patterns of human experience. Non-stop analysis of what someone is or isn't doing, thinking, feeling due to childhood issues or some other traumatic event is patronizing and unnecessarily intrusive. There's a reason mental health professionals go to school for a long time and continue education through their careers, because we should neither be making assumptions nor force-fitting people into certain models or theories. More importantly, you are not a therapist or counselor. It is not your job to therapize or solve someone's problem. Consider the big constellations of therapy speak that you use, if any. Are they about communication, relationships, or mental health diagnosis? Get educated correctly about them and know that a viral TikTok won't always tell you the truth. That's important. Speak in everyday language as simply as possible. This is what the Dr. Anna video that I watched. She said, sometimes, too, the other thing is you could be thinking you're being helpful by using therapy speak, but it comes off as almost robotic or cold, calculated in a way that is not humanizing.
Right.
And so it can really make that person feel very confused, discombobulated, because they're like, you're not talking to me like I know you. You're talking to me like a fucking AI robot. And so it can have the opposite effect that you want, to where they immediately get on the
defensive.
Because they're like, you're talking to me condescendingly.
That's exactly what I was going to say. There's so many times where I have spoken to people and they're like, you're being condescending. And like, my intent is never to be condescending.
But that is the impact it can have.
Especially because I think for a long time, the way that I interacted and engaged with people was different than how I do it now. And so it seemed condescending.
Well, especially if you're using words they don't know the meaning to.
Yes.
And how would they if they don't go to therapy? So if you're talking to somebody who doesn't go to therapy often and you're using these huge phrases and big paragraphs, they can be like, it could be like someone trying to explain the fucking Pythagorean theorem to me, where I'm like, you're talking gibberish right now.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, is it wasn't even about therapy off the majority of the time, because I didn't even start going till recently. But a lot of times when I would speak about stuff in the classroom or behaviorist tactics or childhood development or any political things.
Yeah.
People thought I was being condescending, but it's because for a long time I didn't speak how I wanted to speak, which is very methodical and very long-winded and with a lot of terminology, because I want people to understand that what I'm saying comes from an informed place. Yeah. But I also understand that when you're trying to come from an informed place to someone who like is not even ready for that conversation, it can come off as you're talking down to me.
Totally.
Which sometimes, again, is that person's responsibility to be like, why do you always feel like someone's talking down to you?
And when in doubt, ask them what they think they heard. Yes. Ask them what they think I knew that you would love that part. That I highlighted that specifically for you. When in doubt, ask them what they heard or what they think you mean.
Right.
Because a lot of times there can be such a miscommunication there, and intent versus impact. Your intent is not what happened. Right. So it can be so helpful to be like, what just happened there with you and I? What did you hear? What do you think I meant when I said that? Because I'll tell you what I did mean, but I want to hear first what you heard. And then if you would like to mention your own diagnosis, use it in a supportive way. For instance, as someone with ADHD, I might invite someone to walk and talk with me because it helps my brain focus better. This is that person. And then she'll say, like, if you catch me doodling, I'm actually listening. I'm not being rude to you. It's just explaining things like that.
Oh, my God. That's so my dad. Right. My dad has a notepad right next to the phone. So when he's on the phone, he's just half the time he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's
it's just like, now I can pay attention. That's what I do with crochet and stuff like that.
Same thing
sometimes.
Where I can have a full conversation with my sister or with you where music is blaring, children are screaming, stuff is going on because I'm laser focused.
Yeah.
But if I try and talk to Shane in the car with the music up, he's like, what are you trying to do? You know, I can't hear anything over this.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh,
sorry. Okay. So this way it says I focus on making it a win-win-win for me, them, and the relationship. I always end it with what do you think? So we can find a middle ground. If you're currently experiencing higher levels of anxiety, you could say, I'm feeling crappy today, so please don't take it personally. If you see me distracted, call me back down to earth.
Yeah.
Things like that. Always make it a two-way street. How much information someone wants to give you or how much they want to reflect about a situation is up to them. You can state that the terms of your engagement are always up for review or discussion so you both don't feel trapped in the dynamic you've created.
I love that.
Isn't that so good? Mm-hmm. So I think the biggest thing to take away here is like, you don't have to do any of these things. You can continue on. It's just, how do you want your relationships with people to progress in the future? Because if you don't care, then continue doing what you're doing. Right. But just know you might isolate yourself from people because people don't necessarily have to take being talked to a certain way or treated a certain way or boundaries. They might not, you have to be ready to enforce those. And again, I just want everyone to be super introspective if they can and aware of the things they say and they do and how it might potentially impact other people in their lives that they care about, because I do think that's
that's a very hard thing to do because
it is difficult. I'm still working on it.
People use these things, like you said, with boundaries and I think in my experience recently, when I have set a boundary and I've held the boundary and I've maintained that I'm going to continue holding this boundary, I think the other person thought that my intent behind it was to elicit some kind of change in them. And I'm like, I don't care if you change or not.
Ever. It doesn't matter.
This isn't about you doing something different. It's about me saying that this is how I feel most comfortable and how I'm going to continue to operate. And this is the way that I feel the most comfortable keeping you in my life.
Yeah.
But also keeping myself safe and sane.
Yes. And that again, if there's pushback, maybe a little more open communication in that.
And I think if I would have set a boundary with the expectation that this person
needs to change,
or
perform a certain way,
like they just like freaking ram. I just don't think you can set a boundary and expect someone to try to burst through it and then be upset when they stop knocking. No, it's almost like, what did you want them to do?
Yeah.
They thought they were listening. They thought they were doing what you wanted. And so like yeah, it's just kind of understanding your, going back to the very beginning, intent behind it, and whether or not you do anything to elicit a change in the other person, or whether you're establishing it for yourself. And I guess that goes with all of the other terms as well. Like, are you using this terminology to help someone better understand you? Or are you using it to negatively label this person, this experience, this whatever?
You love an analogy.
Yes,
Dr.
I
Anna
sure
used
do.
a great one. She says a fork is a tool. We use it to eat. We love a fork. We love a tool. If you're Ariel, you can brush your hair with it.
Yep.
Okay. However, you can also stab someone with it.
Yep.
It's not a great way to use a fork, but you can use it that way.
You can.
And so therapy speak is very much the same. It is a tool to help better ourselves. But just know there are ways that we could potentially. I've accidentally stabbed people multiple times with forks. Okay, that's actually true. I have
accidentally stabbed.
I have accidentally stabbed somebody with a fork. They were leaning into my plate and I didn't see it. Okay, but that's, again, it wasn't my intent. Did I apologize afterwards? Yes. Yeah. Do I try to look before I just blindly stab at my plate now? Sure. I learned from that experience. So that's all we're saying.
I do like an analogy.
Use your tool. Use your tool wisely.
Yes. That's what I always say.
And that's all we're saying.
To all of you listening out there, be wise with your tools.
That's what I'm saying. All right. Well, that's all I have today.
Thank you so much.
I hope that wasn't too, we tried to lay it out as well as we could.
I think it gave a lot of stuff to chew on. For sure.
Yeah. Chew on it.
Yeah. Chew on my
tool.
Put
that in your mouth and chew on it. All right. That's that on Weaponized Therapy Speech, everybody. We love you so much. We'll see you next week. All right. We're out. Goodbye.